everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Straightforward, let's do it. What's a creepy story from your childhood? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was a kid, a man who lived in my street told me he had lots of PlayStation games and I could come to his house and choose any to take home. I followed him to his house, and when I got to the door, common sense kicked in and I ran away. Not so much creepy, but my siblings told me when I was about 5 years old that our next door neighbor was chainsawing bodies in his shed and dumping the remains in black bags. Found out a decade later that the black bags were full of leaves. He was using the chainsaw for the hedge. One of the neighbor's kids kept asking me if I knew how to use matches. Her mom babysat my brother and I, so I saw her fairly often. She would pull me upstairs to show me how to start fires. I was afraid to tell anyone about it because I didn't want to get into trouble. That kid ended up burning their house down when she set her mattress on fire. Fortunately, neither she nor her mom were injured. It turns out her dad had been molesting her, and she was acting out because of it. I hope she's doing well now. When I was 9 to 10, I was walking home from a friend's house one day, maybe 3 blocks from my own home, when a car stopped and 2 men inside tried to get me to get into the car with them. My grandmother had told me that if anything like this ever happened, to run as fast as I could and start screaming for help while looking for adults. So I did, and one of the men followed me on foot. I saw a house that had 5 to 6 people on the back porch, so I ran up to them in a panic and told them men were trying to kidnap me. It turns out they were smoking a joint, and I scared them shitless, as my mom later told me, by bursting into their backyard screaming. When they realized what was happening, they asked me what the men and car looked like, and 2 of the dudes ran off looking for them. They were unable to catch them, but saw the car as it sped away. They called the police, and my mom came and got me. Not creepy exactly, but bizarre. When I was a kid around 2004 to 2005, I was with my cousin playing with some miniatures of Brazilian players from the 1998 World Cup. We were playing in the living room, and we wanted to go play football on a field kind of near my house, and my grandpa accepted to take us there. We played for a while and stopped to get ice cream. When we got back home, my house was robbed. It was a mess. Clothes on the ground, all drawers open, purses, jewelry, shoes spread out, but our toys were displayed in a circle in the middle of our living room with Dunga in the center. During the action, one of the robbers stopped and organized the toys this way. This was bizarre in its own, but 2 or 3 years later, Dunga became the head coach for a Brazilian national team, just like the way my toys were displayed. I was 6 years old. My sister was a year old and still in diapers. We had a nanny maid who didn't live with us, but was there every day, Christine. Sometimes her adult son came over in the afternoon to check on her. One day a gold coin went missing that my stepfather had given my mom from the Spanish royal court. He was from Spain. My mom and Christine spent days looking for it and thought maybe my baby sister had shoved it down her diaper or something and that it had been tossed out. They finally gave up the search. Then one day Christine borrowed our car, which she often did, went home, and the next day didn't show up. Her son came over though to return the car and sat with me and my baby sister on his lap as we all worried where his mom was. We never saw her again. A day or 2 later, my mom was asked to come into the coroner to identify Christine's body. After the trial, we found out the details. She'd gone home that day to her house and found her son chiseling the lost gold coin into a belt buckle. They argued, it got heated, and he murdered his mom, wrapped her body in plastic, stuffed her into the trunk of our car, and drove her out into the country and dumped her on the roadside. Detectives came to our house and asked my mom to open the trunk and tell the car he'd returned to us. It was full of dried blood. Of course, all this happened before he came to our house and sat with my baby sister and I. In the end, he was convicted 2 decades in prison. For a long time, he wrote to us, and I think he was paroled a decade or so ago, but we live across the country now. I don't think of this story very often because I was so young, but the gold coin was returned to my mother, and she turned it into a pendant necklace. It still has the chisel marks, and I think of this when I see her wear it. Well, it's a sad story. Obviously, I'm sorry for Christine. and that you had that creepy encounter, but I guess it's nice that you got the family heirloom back, but yeah, that's kind of traumatizing. Glad you're alright. I was in middle school. I was walking home across a bridge. I hear my name being called from behind. I turn around expecting someone there. Nobody was, so I shrug it off. Then some random lady stops her car and asks to see if the kid that jumped over the bridge was okay. She was convinced someone jumped off the bridge. I was alone this whole time. Nobody else was on the bridge. Saw a strange dog-like thing when I was really young. From my memory, I was in my front yard doing something. Then, coming back to our house, when out of the corner of my eye to my left, I saw something. It was this weird, skinny, tall, and furless animal. Black, I think. And it's been such a long time, I don't know if my memory has just slowly morphed into something else, or it was just a regular dog, but like I said, it was skinny, super skinny. I saw it and watched it bolt into the woods beside our house, and I also ran. Then I sprinted back home. That scared the absolute crap out of me. Could have just been a dog and wasn't tall at all. I was super young then, so I was also short. It was, I would say, about 50 to 60 feet away from where I was, so getting a good judgment on its height isn't that easy. My friend in preschool jumped off the jungle gym and hurt her head in front of me. I remember ambulances coming and her getting carted off, and I don't remember her coming back. I don't know what happened to her. Maybe not creepy as much as it is sad. I used to live on an open army base, as in no fences. It was out in the sticks. I used to ride my bike at 0600 up to the base shop to get the newspaper. I remember being about 6 years old and riding my bike home one morning. The garbage man in his big truck started to follow me really slowly, even turning down the streets I turned when I tried to get away. He wasn't picking up garbage. I was petrified. When I was in 5th grade back in the early 80s, my buddies and I were out riding our bikes during a summer break and wound up at our elementary school cruising around the grounds. This is in California, where there are no enclosed hallways, just classrooms and walking open-air hallway paths. We passed a man walking on the campus wearing short shorts. I realized as I passed him that he had his dick hanging out. After biking around a corner, I stopped my friends and laughingly told them that the guy didn't realize his junk was showing. Spoiler, he did. Passed him again in the hallway a few minutes later, and he stopped us and asked if it was okay to sunbathe at the school. We confusingly said, sure, and kept going. Little while after that, we come around and he's fully naked on a small patch of grass doing jumping jacks. Then he proceeded to lay down to sunbathe with a full Woody pointing at the sky in an elementary school. We rode to my friend's house, told his mom, who called it into the police. My friend was a future cop and had a police scanner that we listened to. Our buddy pointed out when the police code for indecent exposure was called over the airwaves. Last we heard about it. Secondhand trauma via my older sister. When she was about 8, a man called the house and asked for her by name. When she was handed the phone, the man said something along the lines of, "I'm going to take you away and kill you." This traumatized her immensely, and even as an adult, doesn't like to be alone. At least to be on the phone with somebody, maybe as a direct result of this incident. I didn't get to hear what he sounded like, but it must have been scary. I was scared for a while too. One day I was walking home, and he decided to do his business on a mailbox in front of this old, somewhat run-down looking house at the edge of the neighborhood. I saw a for sale sign outside of it, and no cars parked in the driveway. My back was turned to the house while I bent down to collect my dog's waste with a doggy bag, when I got goosebumps out of nowhere. I turned around, and there was this extremely elderly woman wearing layers of clothes and a pair of thick sunglasses just standing in her driveway, surprisingly close to me. I didn't see her when I was walking up, and I had no idea how she got there so fast, as I had only turned my back for a few moments. She asked to pet my dog, and took a few steps forward, but my dog suddenly started shaking and showing his teeth. If I let go of the leash, I knew he would attack her, and I had no idea what to do because for the 8 years I've owned him, he's never done that before. The woman asks to pet him again and takes another step forward, sending my dog into a ballistic frenzy. I tell her no and that I have to go, and quickly start walking my dog away. I made it maybe 10 seconds down the sidewalk, but when I turned back, she was gone. Mind you, this woman looked well into her 70s or 80s. I have no idea how she could move so fast. On top of that, I never saw her again, and the house that she was in front of has been sold several times since. There was a man who lived on my street that my older sister and I named Trolley Man because he would walk up and down the street with a shopping trolley cart. Later, we called him Scooter Man because at some point he acquired an electric scooter to scoot around. I, about 9 at the time, was in the front yard while my dad was gardening, and we saw him coming down the road, so I went inside. He stopped for a chat with my dad about his lovely-looking little girls. Dad naturally got defensive and told the man, "There are no girls that live here, go away." To which he insisted, "Oh, I think they do," and creepy smiled at Dad before going on his way. When I was about 14 to 15, me and my 3 friends were walking out of a forested area. There was an old stone fence line we used to cross. It was late, early autumn, so it was really dark. I was in the lead, and my best friend and kid brother were directly behind me. As we got into the stone fence line, I looked up, and there was a figure directly in front of me, a tall figure, just standing about 3 feet in front of me. I stopped immediately. My friend's kid brother seen it at the same time and stumbled into me. I fell forward expecting to crash into the person's chest, but I stumbled into nothing. It was gone. I was stunned silent. My friend's brother asked in a very terrified voice, "You see him, right?" I just said, "Yeah, let's get out of here." The other 2 guys, who were a little further back, saw nothing. I still get a tingle up my spine when I think of it. I remember me waiting with my dad in the car while my mom had to go to the elementary school to drop off something when I kept sticking my head out of the car and arms, and I guess my dad was annoyed, so he rolled the window up while my head and arms were still hanging out, and he let me choke for a couple of seconds until he made me say I was sorry. When my mom came back out, I tried to tell my mom what my dad did because I was scared and confused on why my own dad would do something like that to me. He said that wasn't true, and I was just lying. Oof. When I was 14, my friend and I had just snuck out of the house to go to our boyfriend's house. They were brothers. It was just about dawn on our way back, and we were talking about the creepy, half-burnt-down New England neighborhood haunted house coming up the road. My friend was headstrong and fearless, and she suggested we poke around inside. I was too timid to disagree, so there we were, suddenly on the porch, trying to get into the window. They were all nailed shut. Unsurprisingly, the burnt-down side was too hazardous to get over, so we found ourselves at the back. My friend pulls on the bullhead door, and the whole thing comes off. She bounds down the stairs and finds that it was all boarded up. By this time, I had found my voice, and she was like, "Let's get the F out of here." And we carry on down the road. About 100 yards later, we turn around and see an elderly man in, no joke, a full maroon suit walking behind us. We shit our pants and walked faster. He also starts walking faster. We come up a hill that had a slight bend in the road before an intersection, so we take the opportunity of a blind spot to sprint down to the left turn and dive behind a stone wall. We see him get to the intersection and look for a long time in both directions before carrying on. We waited as long as we could. The sun was up now, and my parents soon would be too. We continued to walk to my house, avoiding the road when we could. For weeks, I thought I'd look out and see him in my driveway in the morning. I have several, but I'll stick with one that I know for sure was part of a dream. I'm very prone to night terrors. It's followed me into my adult life. But when I was a teenager, I remember having one where there was an older woman. I assumed she was a witch. She had taken one of my friends or family members, so I was trying to chase her and get my friend back. She looked like any older woman with long gray hair, wavy, a few wrinkles, bright yellow eyes, milky white skin, and a black hoodie. Next thing I know in the nightmare, she was chasing me. I was no longer chasing her. I woke up as someone downstairs was yelling at a football game. I sat up in bed, light illuminating the room, Yet I still saw this woman reading in my closet with her index finger pressed against her lips while she gently was going, shh. It took a few seconds, but once I told myself it was my brain trying to adjust to being conscious, I was okay. Still a very eerie sight though. I can see her clear as day disappearing into my clothes. Not really my story or a story, but the day my family and I moved out of our old house, my dad, who is a non-believer in the spirits and all that stuff, said he saw a shadow going into my room and that it gave him the chills. He told my mom the story only. About 3 to 4 years after we settled into our new house, my mom finally told me the reason she wanted to move so quickly is because she had an uneasy feeling in that house. She believed that if we stayed there longer, something bad would happen. My nephew, that was around 7 or 8 years old at the time, went to go pick up a few things that were left over in the house with his dad. 10 years later, he was talking with my sister and said how he never liked the house, that it made him feel scared when he was alone, and that on the day he went to go pick up some stuff, he went to my room and on the ceiling fan he saw a shadow moving like it was alive. Nobody told this kid anything about anything, so for him to come up with this, and that my dad to have never saw that shadow people, it just wouldn't have made sense. After my 17-year-old nephew told my sister this, she came to me and told me everything he said. She tells my mom and dad, and then the whole story is getting pieced and it just giving everyone the chills, because all the stories could not be a coincidence. This also leads me to wonder what the hell was in my room all the time with me. I never ever felt anything in that house, so I don't know. Early 2000s, in what was then rural Kenosha, Wisconsin. My sister and I were spending the night at my grandparents' house as we often did. It was not unusual for our parents to stop by during these sleepovers, as all my family lived close together and often hung out together. I was very young, but I remember at this particular sleepover my parents were not supposed to drop by at all, as they had specific date night plans. My sister and I were in the kitchen eating mac and cheese right as the sun was about to set. The kitchen was in front of the house and adjacent to the front door, which at the time of year was always open to the storm door, and there was visibility of the whole front yard from the window above the kitchen sink. My parents were, and sadly still are, voracious smokers. I looked through the storm door, and in the almost dark saw the familiar glow of a lit cigarette being smoked by someone outside. The outline seemed male, so I automatically thought it was my dad, and screamed, "Daddy!" and went to run to the door. My grandma luckily intercepted me, because the man at the door was not Daddy. In fact, it was not a man at all, but multiple men poking around the property and surrounding the house. I now know they were being cased for a potential future robbery. My grandma slammed the door and screamed them off, threatening to call the police. Terrified 6-year-old me created a deep-seated fear of potential people hiding in the dark.